this is for Algebra 1, Lesson 34B, and in this lesson we're learning just the basics of how to graph both a circle and an ellipse. And so let me get started right here and just say that these are the standard equations for a circle, and this is the standard equation for a circle at 0, 0 with a radius of r, okay? And so, for example, when you look at 34B, this very first problem, I can tell you my center is 0, 0. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to fill out my center. And since this is radius squared, the only thing I have to do is take the square root of it to find my actual radius, which would be 2, because 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to fill out my radius. Now, notice I am not doing these problems in order. I think there's a much easier way to do them, okay? So what I was telling the students in class is first plot your center. So I'm going to come up here and plot my center. My radius is 2, and remember what that means. It means it's 2 all the way around. So probably the easiest thing to do without an actual compass is to go up 2, and then you could, I guess, definitely grab it. Go 2 to the right, we're going to go 2 down, we're going to go 2 left. So then, and I'm looking through my phone, but I'm going to try to do this as good as I can. We're going to graph my circle. And so I'm going to try to peek through here and see if I can actually do this. Okay, so this has a radius of 2. Whoop. So I put R there, so I should say my radius is 2. So that's good enough. Now notice here, my point right here is 2, 0. So I'm just going to go ahead and label these. And this point down here is what? 0, negative 2. This point right here is negative 2, 0. And this point right here was 0, 2. Okay? Look what number 1 asks. If x is 0, then y equals what? Well, look here. Do you see how my x values are 0? Notice my y values are 2 and negative 2. So that would be my y values. And that's honestly, I think, easier than just solving it the way the other video shows you. If your y value is 0, notice here on these 2 points, my y values are 0 because this is an ordered pair. This is always x, y. So my y value is 0. Notice my x values are negative 2 and 2. So I'm going to say negative 2 and 2. It doesn't matter what order you put these in, okay? So that's all you have to do for this first column. Now, what if it's not at 0, 0? What if it looks kind of confusing like this? It still is always going to equal your radius squared. And the way you would find your center here is it's got a lot of yucky stuff going on in here. But notice the x is still squared and the y is still squared. And these numbers out here, this coefficient is 1. Okay, that's how I know that it's going to be a circle. Okay, like for example, let me show you something. When I turn the page here in a minute, I'm going to tell you this is not a circle because these values are different. Okay, so this is going to be an ellipse when I get here in just a minute. Same thing right here. This is going to be an ellipse because my coefficients are different. This is a 1 and this is a 5. Okay, so that's kind of telling me that. So let me flip that. So I'm looking at this one. I'm like, hey, this is going to be a circle because my coefficients are the same. Notice that's a 1 and that's a 1. So it is a circle. So my center right here is, hey, what makes this guy 0? And it would be a negative 3 because negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So when I come down here, I would say my center is negative 3. And let's look at my y value. It would have to be a 4. Why? Because 4 minus 4 is 0. So I'm trying to figure out what makes him 0. So that's my center. This is always my radius squared. This equals your radius squared. So all you have to do is take the square root of that, which is 3, to find my radius. So my radius is 3. Now that's enough to graph a circle. So I'm going to come plot my center. So it's negative 3 fourths, I'm going to go over 3. 1, 2, 3, negative. And then it's a positive 4, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then my radius is 3, so I'm going to go 3 in every direction. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. From the center. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, and we're going to have to estimate 3. Okay, nice circle. So I'm going to come through here, plot a nice circle. This shouldn't look like a diamond. Okay, nice curves coming out. Use a compass if you've got one if you want to be nice and neat, because look, I'm a little sick right there. but my radius right here should be 3. So your graph should look something like that. Now, look at your point right here. This is the point 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. This point, 1, 2, 3, is a negative 3, 1. That means this point is a negative 3. Now let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and this point right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 6, because I went left 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know why I put my comma so far over. So that's my point, negative 6, 4. Okay, so let's look at the questions. It says, if my x value is negative 3. Well, look at these points right here. Do you see how the x value is negative 3? Notice your y value is 7 and 1. So those are my y values. Oop, just broke that. Okay, here it says if y equals 4, what is your x values? Well, look at these 2 points. Do you see how the y value is 4? Notice my x value is negative 6 and 0. So that makes it real easy. You get some lead here to come down here and figure out negative 6 and 0. So that's it. Okay, so ding, turn the page. Now, first of all, these numbers are different. So I know it's not a circle anymore. Okay, it's going to be an ellipse. And in case you forget, an ellipse is something like this. It's either going to look kind of like this. This is real weak, or like this. That's an ellipse. Okay, so that's my visual. When you have an ellipse, to be in standard form, it needs to equal 1. So this is a 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by 12. You want to be sure to write your equation in standard form. Now notice 3 goes into 12 4 times. So I'm going to have x squared over 4. 2 will go into 12 6 times. So sad that that's not a perfect square, and I'll show you why here in just a minute, equals 1. So I want to see everybody's standard form of an ellipse. Now, in order to find the center of this ellipse, you do it the same way you did for a circle. You look up here at your x squared and your y squared, and you ask yourself what makes it 0. And this would be 0, because 0 squared is 0. Same thing for my y. So I'm going to come down here. It doesn't even say ask my center, so I'll just go ahead and graph it. There's my center. Now, remember on your circle, you took the square root of that last number to figure out how far you would move. That's exactly what I'm going to do here. Is I'm going to look under the x, and I'm going to take the square root of 4. So notice, I'll come, let's see, where should I do this? Right here. I'm going to take the square root of 4, which is 2. Now, we all know the x-axis runs back and forth like this, okay? So from my center, I'm going to go back and forth 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay? Just did it again. Okay, under the y is the 6. So I'm going to take the square root of 6, which is not perfect. So you can use your calculator, but one thing that's nice about this book, I guess it's nice, is if you do not have your calculator, gosh, my fingers are sticking to these pages. Notice if you go to 34A, right here at the top, it tells you the approximate values of these different numbers. The square root of 6 is about 2.4. So let me come over here. The square root of 6 is about 2.4. Now notice the 6 is under the y. We all know the y-axis goes up and down. So what I'm going to do from my center is approximately go up 2.4. So I'm going up the square root of 6, and I'm going down the square root of 6, which happens to be about 2.4. So yes, we're estimating. Then we're going to draw nice. Now notice this is not a kite. Do not draw a kite. We're going to come out like this just a little bit. Nice smooth curves. So it should look something like, I mean, that's weak, okay? But try to do, I am looking through my phone, so that makes it a little bit more interesting. Okay, now notice this point right here is 2, 0. This point is a negative 2, 0. This is 0, and I went down the square root of 6, okay? Now remember, we estimated the square root of 6 to be 2.4, but we went, it should be exactly the distance of the square root of 6. Here, I went left and right 0, but I went up the square root of 6, okay? So if x equals 0, then what does y equal? Look, here's when x values are 0. Notice my y value is either the square root of 6 or negative the square root of 6. Okay? What happens if my y value is 0? Notice here my y values are 0, so my x value is either 2 or negative 2. Okay, so there's my answer. This figure is an ellipse. Okay, all right, let's try another one. Oh my gosh, it's an ellipse. How do I know it's an ellipse? Because the coefficients are different. Both my x and my y are squared and I'm adding, so definitely I could go ahead and say, hey, this is an ellipse. So I can go ahead and figure that out. Remember, if it's an ellipse, it's got to equal 1, so I'm going to divide everything by 15. So there we go. Sometimes these numbers will simplify and sometimes they won't. Hopefully they do. I did one in class for the students that didn't. It was yuck. But 5 goes into 15 3 times. So I've got x squared over 3. Notice now that my 3 goes into 15 5 times. So I've got y squared over 5 equals 1. Yes, you need to show this because we're doing this just a little different than maybe the way they teach it on the Math You See video. Okay, now my center is still 0, 0 because that's what makes this up here 0. So my center is 0, 0. Notice under the x is a 3. We all know the x-axis runs back and forth. In order to figure out how far to go back and forth, you're going to take the square root of that. Well, the square root of 3 is ugly. Go back there, look at your book if you don't know what it is, and find out what the square root of 3 is. I think it's 1.7, but look right here. Look, there it is, 1.7. So I'm going to go about 1.7 back and forth. So 1.7. So yes, I'm estimating. Okay, under the y is a 5. We all know the y-axis goes up and down. And there's a 5 there. I always will take the square root of that to figure out how far to go up and down. So if you go look at the square root of 5, whoop, there it is, 2.2, about. It's not exact because it's not perfect. So I'm going to go up and down 2.2. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and a little bit more. Down 2 and a little bit more. I'm going to do a smooth ellipse. So here we go. Ah, I missed it. Okay, well, that's what I get for looking through this crazy phone. Okay, so notice this point right here. You could say you went over about 1.7, but I don't want about. I went over the square root of 3. So this point right here is the square root of 3, 0. Here I went left the distance of the square root of 3, 0. This point, I went left and right 0, but I went up about 2.2. Remember 2.2 is the square root of 5. Exactly. Okay, and this point is 0, negative the square root of 5. Okay, so you can now fill in these blanks. If your x value is 0, look at here how your x value is 0. My y value is the square root of 5 and negative the square root of 5. Ooh, I forgot my negative sign there. Okay, if my y value is 0, there's my y value, that's 0. My x value is either this negative the square root of 3 or positive square root of 3. So it looks just like that, and that's all you have to do. Okay, now this one, by the way, is going to be a circle. Remember, you take the square root of that, which is 4, to tell yourself how far to move. So here, my radius is 4, and my center is what makes it 0, which would be negative 4, 4, because negative 4 plus 4 is 0, 4 minus 4 is 0. Okay, so that's how you would do that. So you would start with your center, which is negative 4, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then all you have to do is graph this. So we're going to go back and forth 4 in every direction. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. You're just going to have to estimate. 1, 2, 3. Get out a compass if you've got one. If not, eyeball it. Do it the best you can. Okay? I'll do that later when I'm not looking through the phone. And again, I knew that was a circle because these numbers out front were the same. Here they happen to both be 1s. Okay, definitely this one is again ellipse because this is a 1 and this is a 5, so therefore it needs to equal 1, so I'm going to divide everything by 20. So my standard form is x squared over 20 plus y squared over 4, because 5 goes into 20 4 times, equals 1. Okay, my center is 0, 0. Love that. And this guy is easy because he's perfect. He's a perfect square. The square root of 4 is 2, so I know I'm going to go up and down 2. So I'm going to go 1, 2. I'm going to go down 2, 1, 2. Okay, this one's not so easy. I know the x-axis runs like back and forth, and I want to go the square root of 20. In your calculator, you can just find the square root of 20. I think it's about 4.45 or something. So I'm going to go over here to my calculator and double check it. Yep, it's about 4.47, which is about 4.5. Okay, so what you're going to do there, and in a minute here I'll show you how you could have gotten that even without a calculator, okay? But you're going to go back and forth about 4.5. So I'm going to go over here, 1, 2, 3, 4.5, 1, 2, 3, 4.5. So, and then we're going to do this nice smooth ellipse like this. Wow, well, that looks really sick. I'll have to fix that when I'm not looking through that fun. Okay, so make yours prettier than that. That's all you have to do, because all I said was to graph it. But in order to graph it, you kind of have to show that. By the way, as a review from last week, do you remember the square root of 20 could have been written like this? 4 times 5 is 20. You could have pulled him out, which is a 2. Okay, this means 2 times the square root of 5. And if you remember, the square root of 5 was about 2.2. So if you hit that in your calculator, 2.2 times 2, you should have it. Okay, that gives you about 4.4. So that is close enough. You know, it's actually closer to 4.5, but you can see this was approximation. So this is going to be off just a little bit. But you could do it either way. Just directly crunch it in your calculator, or you can use the fact of what you learned last week. Hopefully that will get you guys started.